It doesn't take a lot of searching to find all the activity that's been on my page this past month. And with the upcoming release of Discovering Christian Witchcraft in just 2 days, I can imagine where all this activity is coming from. Now, I've talked about the evangelical egregore before and how it masquerades as Jesus and tricks people into following a completely distorted idea of Christian faith and principle. However, the egregore is not the only thing at play. While it exists mostly as a puppet of something much larger and much more difficult to deal with. Let me explain. In the many different branches of mysticism that surround this entity we call God, there's an idea that when all was created from that murky water in Genesis, all things were then separated from one another. Before that moment, all things were one in that murky water. There was no distinction between anything. Everything existed together as one universal thing. This is the abyss. But one day, God decided to separate from all of that murky water distinct things like trees and birds and people and even his own self. He defined what made him God, and as a result, he also defined what made him not God and cast it out of him. This thing I will call the dragon. Naturally, when the dragon became separated from God and classified ultimately as not God and not holy and not divine and therefore not worthy of reverence, it became so angry. And ever since that moment, it has been trying desperately to prove itself worthy, to prove itself divine, by trying to create false worlds, by trying to trick people into thinking that it is God. But unlike God, which exists in balance between justice and mercy and all these other things, the dragon is only severity. It is only destruction and fear and terrible, terrible rule. And you can see it here in these many comments people leave behind. You can see how many people cannot tell the difference between the true God and God's own shadow. When people threaten you with hellfire, or tell you that you are an abomination or a heretic, when people think that because they've followed a stringent set of rules correctly that they become holy enough to justify the hurling of so many insults, that is how you know you have encountered someone who secretly works for the dragon without even realizing it. In Discovering Christian Witchcraft, in the chapter on this husk or shell of God, this shadow, this dragon, we say this: "But the dragon works hard. Every day it screams its many lies, hoping that by time they reach the ears of men, those ugly, scraping words will become suggestive whispers that turn them towards evil. It knows we write these words. It knows you read these words. It knows its grip is slipping, and we know what an animal does when it becomes desperate. Therefore, just as the apostles were accused of sorcery and wickedness, heresy and blasphemy, so too will you be hissed at, accused, and accursed when you stand by the light and deny the dragon its deceptions. So too will you have fingers pointed your way as people try to drown out truth with the much sweeter false promises the dragon made to them. Crux sacra sit mi lux, non draco sit mi dux."